everyone. Welcome to another Hub members interview. I love these interviews. It is such a gift to be able to chat with some incredible people in the low carb space. So while I'm giving you guys a minute to get on, just want to let you know that I have a few people lined up, not yet confirmed. Not sure if I'll get any next week, but I'm going to try for one more before I head to the US with Dr. Avi. So very excited. Obviously over there, I'm going to come in regularly into the hub with little interviews and just let you know what's happening at Low Carb USA, which is really exciting anyway. But just wanted to let you know there'll be a lot more coming your way. So stay tuned. I know, I hope you love these conversations as much as I do, which I know you do. So we are very lucky today to have Nikki Motat with us, who is part of the Ellipse Health team, Jessica Turton's team in Sydney. And I'm going to ask her just to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about, obviously, the work she does as accredited practicing dietitian, and then we'll get into finding out her story.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go.
Okay, well, my name is Nikki. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian here in Sydney. In my family, I have my husband, Dom. I have a almost 4-year-old, Leo, and almost 2-year-old, Sienna. I guess, I got into dietetics, straight after school. I went into uni. I sort of knew what I wanted to do, which was nice. And at university, I came across Jess. So we were actually doing our uni degree together. And that's where I sort of got into the low carb space. I came across it. She introduced me to it. And it was interesting because for so long, as a teenager, I had gone through so many different diets and always wanting to lose weight and why can't I stop eating and all that sort of thing. And when she sort of introduced me to low carb and I sort of started to pick up some of the things she was doing on a daily basis, just from what she was doing, I realized, wow, I'm starting to not be hungry all the time and not be thinking about food all the time. And even though they were like really subtle changes, I was like, this is cool. I like this. And it was just almost that like missing puzzle for me. And so that's how I got introduced to low carb through Jess, which obviously you know really well. She's amazing. And I've just been working in that space, I guess, in dietetics since finishing uni in 2017, and I've loved it. And to be honest, when I first got into dietetics, it was only for my own benefit. I wanted to learn what to eat for myself because I was just so frustrated. And I guess once I graduated and got into the space, I've become so passionate about helping other people to know this information because, it's just so unfortunate that the information that has been out there is so outdated. People are just not getting the results. Like we're getting bigger and we're, disease is going up. And so I just feel really passionate about helping people in general to improve their overall health and find this information that I found so, I guess, important for my overall health.
And we're so grateful that you are because, obviously it's not really what you were taught in uni. Jess and I have talked a number of times about, what it was like when she was there and how fantastic that she, connected with you. I'm sure you weren't the only one. I'm sure there was a few kindred spirits in there sitting there going, oh, this is just wrong. It can't be like this. But there's so many dietitians out there in the public space, some of them are just hugely, Insta famous, have so many followers. And it's crap, like the stuff they promote and still talk about is crap. How does that sit with you? Like, what do you do when you see stuff like that? Do you just bite your tongue?
Look, I think I have to. I just don't like to get into a bit of a war with people over internet. It's not worth it. And I think, people, become Insta famous for all sorts of reasons. And it's, you can go on Google and, you might get the wrong information anyway. So I guess it's just, making sure that, if you are wanting that information, you go to someone who is actually, well, I guess, those dietitians are also qualified. But I guess it's the luck of the draw in a way, don't you think? Like who you end up seeing and whether they resonate with what you're doing. But I guess the best thing we can do is just put out there the information that we do have, and just sharing it with as many people, and then those people are inspired to then share it with other people. So I mean, we do get a lot of referrals from other patients and things like that, so it's nice that people are then sharing it with their families, and
look, I agree. Some days it's just like whatever, but it's just so confusing, isn't it, for people? So most of the people that land to you, because you sit in Dr. Pran's gastroenterology clinic, is that right? So you kind of get a lot of people that obviously have gut issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I predominantly work from Pran's office, and I also work through Ellipse Health online as well. So that's a bit more varied. But yeah, I guess when I work here, it is a lot of gut issues, obesity, like diabetes, those sort of diseases. And so it's a lot of that. And I mean, I guess low carb is not the answer for everyone, but for the most part, when people do reduce their carb intake, they do see a huge improvement in their overall health, which is really nice. And then I think the other thing to think about is that, it's not, I guess a lot of dietitians, when they hear low carb, they kind of freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, that's not good. But, low carb doesn't necessarily mean no carb. It's just about adjusting to what that person's requirements are. A lot of people nowadays are carb intolerant. They need to reduce their carb intake to feel better. And it's different amounts for everyone. It might be 100 grams a day for someone. It might be 50 grams for someone else. So that's why you work with a dietitian to figure out what's the right amount for you, how you're going to get those results that you want, but also making sure you're prioritizing other macronutrients as well. So we know that proteins are really important, but if someone was just going on a low carb diet on their own, they might not be thinking about the protein as well, and they might go, oh well, it just didn't work. But you really have to prioritize those essential nutrients like your proteins, making sure you're getting some fats, and then also looking at your carbs. So it's really important that you're looking at those macronutrients and finding out the ratios that work for you, rather than just focusing on one nutrient. Because I've had people who do really well on a generally high carb diet, but like I said, everyone's different. So it's just working out what's going to be the best option, and depending on your goals as well. So some people, don't want to go on a super low carb diet. It's not possible for them. So we have to kind of do it more slowly. So I think it's important working with the individual and finding out their goals.
Absolutely. And, you say low carb's not for everyone, but I would say that low crap isn't for anyone. So that's the way I see it. Like I have conversations with people all the time who get stuck in their head about the label low carb. But, when we talk about it, it's actually just eating real food, making sure that we get in enough of the protein and fat, exactly as you say. And that's where there's probably a barrier, because we've been told that, well, meat, I mean, I've had this discussion with Pran, and you must get it a lot too with people with gut. Well, I can't eat meat because it rots in the gut, and, it's going to cause cancer. And then, of course, fats are going to give me heart disease. So, you're working with a lot of, obviously, beliefs out there that are just not founded, is that... Yeah. So how do you, I mean, if someone comes to you, say they've got, IBS, or, they've got some gut stuff, and they say, look, I'm trying to eat, healthy. I'm trying to eat low fat. I'm trying to eat more veggies. I'm trying to eat more healthy whole grains. So how would you start? Tell me some of the stuff that you say to them about, about that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Most of the time when people are eating low fat, or even they say, oh, I don't add any salt to my food, when I then go into detail about, when I go into detail about, well, fats are actually healthy. They keep, they stabilize your blood sugars, they give you energy. And for the most part, most people are really excited to hear that. They get excited that they can have butter and they can have those things that they know will fill them up, but they just feel so afraid to, do it. And so hearing it, I think, from a professional makes them go, oh my gosh, okay, it's liberating that I can have this. And even when it comes to salt, I get so many people that every time I ask this salt question, they go, oh, I just add a tiny bit. They think I'm going to say, cut it out. But then when I say, look, sodium is actually an essential nutrient, you need to have a certain amount coming in, and you probably need to add more, they again become quite excited about that. They go, oh, well, my food's going to have more flavor again. And then, you get those people who are so afraid. They go, oh my gosh, no, that can't be right. I can't have salt. And so that's where the resources we have come in really handy. I mean, initially when they come in, we don't just go into, individual things per se, but it's more, general. So we look at their diet history, look at the macronutrient ratios, figure out if they're protein deficient, if they're having, enough healthy fats, that sort of thing. And then we go through a bit of a food list that's going to be, I guess, related to that particular person. So whether it's going to be just a general healthy eating guide, or it could be like a low carb diet, or it could be sort of like an elimination. So if they're coming with a lot of gut issues, experiencing diarrhea, they've got bloating, it's all over the place, then we cut everything right back. So we remove all of the inflammatory triggers, which could be related to, different anti-nutrients in vegetables and grains. Even nuts and seeds sometimes can be a problem. And obviously your high FODMAP foods as well, we tend to remove, which are those high carbohydrate foods as well. So we strip everything right back, make sure that they're prioritizing their proteins and healthy fats, because we know those things don't trigger the gut. And it's funny, a lot of the times I get people that say, oh, avocado is definitely a no-no for me, or like eggs is a no-no. I know it affects my gut. But then when I actually get them to go on this elimination diet for a couple of weeks, and then they trial, a few other different things like eggs, they go, oh my gosh, I've had eggs and it's been fine. So it's not always what you think the trigger is. It's sometimes it's an accumulation of other things that then causes your body to have a reaction. Sometimes it's just that elimination diet and give your gut a bit of a rest. And then also looking at micronutrient deficiencies. So we always look at blood results, make sure that there aren't nutrient deficiencies, because they can be underlying a lot of the gut issues as well. So B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, vitamin D, these things are quite common in Australia. Even though we've got such good variety of foods, unfortunately, we do see a lot of deficiencies, and they need to be corrected at the same time for people to start to feel better. So it is sort of it's a lot of different things that are involved, and as the sessions kind of go on, we do then really focus on different nutrients that we think are important for that person. So for example, it could be focusing on hydration, so your electrolytes, looking at your salt intake, magnesium, looking at your water intake, and kind of just focusing on individual nutrients as the sessions go along. And I think the nice thing is at the end of, maybe depending on the person, but it could be a couple of sessions, they really have a great understanding of what they need to do going forward. So I think a lot of the times when you see a health professional like a dietitian, you get told, okay, this is what you need to eat, but you don't really understand why. Like, why are you doing this? What's happening inside the body? But I think the nice thing about what we do here is that, people get a really good understanding of what they need to do and why, like what's happening inside their body. We explain the blood results, whereas, most doctors don't have time to do that. And so I think it's a lot of empowerment from, knowing what they need to do. And even if they don't see us for, I don't know, however long, they still, can stay on track and make really good decisions.
Yeah, I love that. It's so important to understand what food does in the body, even that simple, well, what is a carb? What does it give us? What is a protein? What's the function of that? And what is the function of fat? Just understanding that will help us to make the choices that we, want to make for our body. Because one thing I can ask you about the gut, because I think, it's such an interesting thing. And most of us have pretty poor gut health, I think, particularly coming from the standard, Western diet. Is, in your opinion, in terms of what you've seen, is elimination enough to heal, or does it need supplements, or, does the gut need extra help? Do you find just kind of taking the irritating stuff out enough for most people?
Yeah, look, I mean, we get the odd people that just don't really respond to all sorts of different strategies that we put forward. But for the most part, I find for maybe 90% of the people I see, by giving their gut a bit of a rest, that's all the gut needs, because your body knows how to deal with possible trigger foods from time to time. But if it's happening on a daily basis, 24/7, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm over this, it can become irritated. But giving that time for your gut to rest, and at the same time, we're also correcting any nutrient deficiencies as well, which, if you don't do that, you may not see any results by just doing the diet. So that's where the blood results come in really handy. But the combination usually does the trick. So we don't necessarily do the whole, I know a lot of dietitians do the FODMAP, approach, where you kind of eliminate everything and then you bring one thing at a time, and it's quite tedious, whereas I find that for the most part, people get really good results by just removing all the triggers, giving their gut a bit of a rest, and then we sort of go on a more varied, more diet that includes more things, and they're able to tolerate it just fine, just because their gut has had that rest. But again, it's also about understanding what they're eating. So as you said, whole foods is what we're looking for. So if someone's going and having a lot of, packaged foods, then I always talk to them about how to read ingredient labels, because we're just eating a lot of crap these days. Everything's packaged. We don't even know what's in them. There's a lot of numbers, things that we don't understand. And it's like, what is that doing to our gut? And we don't really understand the full effect of these things just yet. And so we're really mindful of our intake of packaged foods, things that have numbers in them, and preservatives and flavors, and, even sweeteners. And we know that, some sweeteners even have, a big effect on our gut, could lead to diarrhea and that sort of thing. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but for the most part, people do get really good response just by giving their gut a bit of a rest from all those inflammatory foods.
If you were working with someone, so just the average Joe, who had some gut stuff, and you suggested this elimination just to give the gut a rest, like, what do you consider as being an optimal time? And I guess we're looking more carnivore-ish, for that sort of elimination, just to give the gut a rest. You said that the fats and the proteins are, irritating on the gut. So is it like a couple of weeks? Is it like, is it obviously individual, but is there an average?
Yeah, generally 4 to 6 weeks is what I would recommend. But also, in asterisks, it's also important to know how long it takes them to be symptom-free. So what we want is for them to feel good again, and then at that point we want to reintroduce some things, because if they do it for 4 weeks and they still feel the same as before the 4 weeks, then that's not really showing us anything, if that makes sense. So we basically want them to be symptom-free, and then that's when we go to the next level of kind of making a bit more variety in their diet. But even with the elimination style, it's generally around, proteins are the bulk of it, making sure you're getting a good variety there, and then including some healthy fats. But even with the carbohydrates, the low density carbs can be included. Some veggies are still included as long as they're cooked and peeled and that sort of thing, just to reduce the extra fibrous material that would come if it wasn't cooked. So you still get some of your veggies. You can include things like, cow's milk if it agrees with you. So there's a bit more variety, and herbs and that sort of thing. But it is predominantly just based around, I guess, proteins and And it is a short period of time. Some people, once I would like show them the food list, they go, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is too much. And then so we just individualize it to them. So I might say, hey, that's fine. You can include a little bit of rice with your dinner, blah, blah, blah. So make it work for them. But then also remind them that, if you don't stick to it 100%, then you may not see results as quickly as you would like. So kind of just putting it back on them if they are, and again, some people are really black and white. They can go all in and do it. And some people just need that kind of extra bit of like holding hand. And that's fine too. So that's where I guess, again, individualization comes in, because some people don't need to go super strict to get results. Some people might, I see people and I say, hey, this is the food list. This is what you want to do. And they go off and I might see them in 2 weeks and they're like, yeah, I feel amazing. And then I go through the diet and they're still including some things that I wouldn't normally include, but they're feeling good. And I think, well, okay, well, that's a good amount of food for you and it's kind of working for you. So let's just keep it like that. You know what I mean? So it is kind of working with the individual, listening to their symptoms and what they're experiencing. And for the most part, people need to listen to their body. And if their body's telling them that, they don't have digestive issues, they're feeling energetic, and they're, generally feeling really good, then yeah, let's go with it.
Yeah, cool. I do want to get on to parenting and the amazing book that you've written, but I just have one other question about fasting. About the gut, which is which is fasting. So fasting is in your view, it's something that's really good for our gut, obviously, like a 24-hour, maybe up to a couple of days fasting.
Yeah, look, fasting can be great. So it does give your body a bit of a rest. As we know, digestion takes a big toll on our bodies. So if you're eating all the time and not giving your gut a bit of a rest, it can't do other things. We know that, it can be amazing at doing all sorts of things. So I think fasting is good, but also being mindful of your current health state. So if someone isn't metabolically flexible, so meaning that you can't necessarily go from burning sugars to burning fats, then I don't think it's necessarily a healthy option, because it just puts more stress on your body. So, for example, if someone is relying on carbohydrates for their energy and they're constantly getting these blood sugar roller coasters and they're burning sugar predominantly, and then they go on a fast, your body's going to feel quite stressed, going to go, oh my gosh, what just happened? And stress hormones can go up. So in that instance, I don't think doing a long fast or any sort of fast in general would be ideal. I think it's important to actually train your body to burn fat first and know that your body is going to be okay on burning fat. And then you can then do the fasting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, when I've seen it done that way, I think our body kind of naturally fasts in a lot of time, because we start listening to our hunger, like we're not hungry, so we're not going to eat. But just on that though, do you see with particularly women, in that sort of menopausal, that they're not hungry, they kind of fast, have been fasting for a long time in the mornings because they're not hungry, and they reach this point where they're just not losing weight, they're probably maybe even starting to gain weight, but really overall they're not consuming a lot of food. Do you think sometimes then, I don't know, what happens there? Is that just is it a hormonal thing? Is it a metabolism thing? Do you see that happen?
Yeah, look, it's definitely, I think hormones play a big role, obviously, around menopause. But on top of that, I think it's what you just mentioned, they basically not eating enough calories. And generally, they start to become more stressed. So internally, their body is just feeling a little bit like, what is going on? Potentially not getting enough calories means that their body is trying to store more fat as well. And so I think even though for some people they might skip a meal because they're not hungry, because they're, you know, generally on a lower carb diet. But if someone's kind of skipping meals and it's just become a habit, and it's not necessarily, sometimes it's healthy and other times it's not healthy. And just because someone doesn't get hungry doesn't mean they should probably include something at breakfast. So if someone comes to me and I think they should include something in the morning, I usually get them to start with something small, maybe just like one boiled egg or a little bit of cheese, just to kind of give your body something. Because again, if your body's not used to burning fats, and if, you know, if they're gaining weight, that sort of thing, their body's probably not burning much fat, then going longer without food is probably not ideal for you. And I find that for a lot of people like that, they're also having coffee in the morning, which can actually raise your blood sugars. Let's say if you have a coffee on milk, it's going to raise your blood sugar, especially on an empty stomach, which then is going to raise your blood sugars. And then you're going to get a crash after. So that's sort of like what's happening with people having coffee, not breakfast, to kind of balance the caffeine absorption. And then that's going to, you know, by itself could lead to more stress hormones being released, your blood sugar is not being balanced, and then sort of kind of sets you off not great for the rest of the day. So I think it's a combination of hormones, but also just diet not being optimal.
Yeah. I see. It's interesting. And I think too, some of us, you know, women have tried so hard over the years to do it right. You know, we've tried every diet. We've done the eat less, move more. And I think sometimes it's hard to let go of that calories thing, that, you know, the fasting becomes, you know, oh, you know, I must have to eat less if I'm not losing weight. And, you know, I just see it, and yeah, it just doesn't necessarily work in our favor to do it that way, particularly that age group, I think, you know, and because we're probably a bit slower, you know, we've lost muscle, you know, there's such a combination of things, and the stress, you know. And I love how you talk about it, and Jess, you know, she talks about this too, you know, that stress is not necessarily, you know, what's going on around us and stuff, but it can be this internal stress because our body's just struggling to get enough calories, or, you know, there's just, you know, insulin resistance. That's a massive stress on the body, right? So it's so important to obviously feel, you know, I love it, great conversation, but I really want to talk to you now about kids and the book that you've written. And first of all, you know, as a mom with 2 young kids, how did you kind of navigate, you know, going from obviously full-time work? How did that all look for you? I mean, and, you know, we know that's hard and challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I think going from 0 to 1 was definitely challenging because your whole world is like upside down. I mean, it's exciting. Obviously, it's fun and it's very rewarding. But yeah, I think initially you kind of go, oh my gosh, I really can't do the same things that I used to do. And for a long time, I think I was really frustrated that I couldn't get as much done as I wanted to in a day. But now I've gotten to a place where I go, okay, well, my day with the kids is just hanging out with them. It's not about, you know, getting the housework done or, you know, getting some work done. You know, that if that happens, good. But if it doesn't, that's fine, because my priority is looking after them, especially because they are so little at the moment. But initially it was a bit hard. But I think once I had Leo and started going back to work, it was also a really nice transition because I could spend some time with him, most of my time with him. But then when I was at work, I was able to do what I really love as well. So it was a really nice combination. And I kind of really enjoyed it, and I love being at work because, you know, I work part-time, so it's not like it hasn't taken over my whole life. And then I love being at home with the kids, so I feel like I've found a bit of a balance. But especially when I was writing the guide for nutrition in pregnancy, that was quite, you know, a lot of time had to go into that, so that was a bit hard trying to find that time to, you know, do that. And it was just a lot of juggling with the husband. You know, he would take the kids and I would work on the ebook, and so it was just like a lot of time spent doing work. And, you know, the good thing is it's what I love, so I think that helps a lot. But yeah, I think you get to a point, initially it's hard, but you get to a point where you find a bit of a balance between your work and your life and everything else.
Yeah, awesome. And I think sometimes we just got to experiment to find that balance. But what does a low carb dietitian feed their kids? So how is it all been?
Very good, yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, kids are obviously very metabolically healthy. So initially when I started feeding the kids, like, I mean, actually, Leo loves eggs and so does Sienna actually. So Leo, my older son, he will always have eggs in the morning and happily have eggs every single day, which is lovely. So he normally has like 2 scrambled eggs. He's not a huge fan of bread, so he would just kind of have the scrambled eggs by themselves. And sometimes he would have like 4 eggs in the morning, which is kind of crazy. But if he's like, going through a growth spurt, he will just be like, more eggs, more eggs. And so that's fine. Lunches are usually just kind of snacks, like whatever I find. If I've, got some like protein pancakes that I make, I'll like give them that, or I might have like a piece. Oh, actually, Leah doesn't eat much bread, but usually it's just snacks. It could be fruit, nuts. Leah loves nuts. And then for dinner, it's always a home cooked dinner, and it's not necessarily going to be like low carb. So we do like slow cooked lamb with mashed potato and veggies. We might do like rice and chicken. So my background is Persian. And so we have a lot of rice in our diet, but we also include a fair bit of protein on top. So I think it's just about finding the balance of, how much rice and how much protein and, different flavors as well, which is really nice. And so they kind of eat, a variety of things. Sienna is a little bit more tricky. So we kind of have to we have to put a bit of tomato sauce on the eggs.
There's always one.
Yeah, but generally speaking, I really do make an effort to always think about protein, because I think I hear a lot of kids, like I hear a lot of mums say, oh, my kids are just eating all the time. They just never stop eating. And I think one thing that I always make an effort is, okay, have they had protein? Because that will make a difference, in terms of the decisions they make later on. So if they, if there's sweets around, or, they go to grandparents or whatever it may be, if they've had a good breakfast, then I feel better in terms of, what choices they're going to make, because, they're not going to stick to your diet all the time, and you don't want that to become a source of stress. So yeah, I remember actually going to a cafe once, and Leo was like so little, and I was contemplating on getting like the protein powder in the shake for him, like the smoothie. And the lady, her face was like so concerned that I'm like considering protein powder for like a 2-year-old. And but it's always in my head, protein.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. There was something I was going to say from what you said. Oh yeah, what are your protein pancakes? Are they really easy?
So, yeah. I mean, I think they're easy. So I just mash like a banana. I put almond meal, a combination of almond meal and a bit of spelt flour. And then I do like dark chocolate, because the kids really like dark chocolate. And then I do a scoop of protein powder to it as well. So like collagen.
The whey. Oh, okay.
I like collagen at the moment. So it's just unflavored collagen that I do. And then sometimes I do other things, like maybe like some hemp seeds, or I don't know, cinnamon and salt as well. But yeah, it's quite simple, and I cook it in coconut oil. And that's one of the eggs, of course, eggs. So 2 eggs as well.
Given, yeah.
And I think it's nice, because I mean, because Leo, if he has eggs every single day, I think he will probably get sick of them. So it's either eggs or the protein pancakes is usually our breakfast. We don't really do anything else.
No, well, that's pretty much what we do with just eggs. They have many ways of being cooked, and sometimes just changing the way they're cooked is adding the variety. So let's talk about the wonderful book, so Nutrition and Pregnancy. So what's that all about? I think it's an area that is it's kind of grey. People get a little bit concerned about eating low carb real food, when they are pregnant, but we know obviously that real food is is really important when we're pregnant. Tell us about the book, what's in it, and whatever you want to tell us about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what happened was when I was pregnant with Leo, I started Googling and, what do I need to eat? Obviously I did have a dietetics degree, but when they did the pregnancy part, I was not listening. I did not care. So I started Googling. I was like, okay, what do I eat? And the information out there was so bad. And I just could not believe it. So it wasn't great, unfortunately. And luckily, I came across a book by Lily Nichols, who's a dietitian in the US. It's not called Nutrition in Pregnancy. Real Food
and Pregnancy. Yeah.
I started reading the book and I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And that as well as, my own kind of knowledge and what I started to research was really helped me to have such a good pregnancy. Healthy weight gain, I felt really good. And obviously pregnancy to pregnancy can be different. But because I felt really good, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to get something out there that, Lily's book is incredible, but it is packed with information, to a point where I think in the US, if you've read her book, you can sign off on some credits for uni. So it is really packed with information. And for me, who's a dietitian, and obviously I do this for a living, I found it really good. But I think for an average person who may not even have the time to read that book, I just thought I need to make something that's I guess more Australian-based information, but also more suffice and just a bit of a summary. And so that's where the idea came of writing this guide. And basically what the guide entails is it's got 3 different parts. The first part is mainly around preconception, but also things like looking at your blood work as well. So there's a big section on how to read. So what blood markers to actually request from your GP if you're planning to fall pregnant or if you're in the early stages, how to actually interpret those results. So basically we've got these ranges to aim for, how to interpret them. There's actually a letter that you can give to your GP, because sometimes GPs aren't so keen on organizing all the blood markers, but there's a really good letter in there. But then also it touches on things like stress, because obviously, it's normal to be stressed during pregnancy, but what are the impacts that it's having on the baby, and how we can manage it. And then another part, which isn't so much related to nutrition, but I think it's so important, is looking at endocrine disrupting chemicals. So basically environmental toxins and their impact on our overall health. And just, again, I didn't want to go into too much detail, but I basically made a bit of a guide as to how you can reduce your toxic load by doing these things. So, for example, when it comes to our fruit and vegetables, there's a lot of pesticides in them, unfortunately. Now, you could buy organic, but we can't always find organic. So, if you actually wash your fruit and veg in a solution of bicarb and water, you can actually remove a lot of that pesticides from your fruit and veg. So that's just one example. So I go through a lot more in there, but I think that's quite important. And then the second part is all about, what to eat. So I break down protein, carbohydrates, fats, what are good fats, what are bad fats, what carbs you want to be including, as you said, more whole foods. And then I also go through some carbohydrate options that are packaged and look at the ingredients. So what are the additives involved? And then how can you make a better decision? Because, you might want to include a wrap in your diet. That's fine. But you could buy a wrap that has 20 different additives, or you can buy a wrap that has none. And that would be much better for you. So go through that. And then the third part is, actually, I should say in the first section, I also go into the prenatal supplements too, which is obviously quite confusing, but I do go through what to look for when you're looking for a prenatal supplement, because there's so many out there now, and I give some, suggestions of different ones that you might want to look into. And then the third part is all about the different nutrients involved. So all the micronutrients like your folate, B12, choline, vitamin D, all the ones that are really important for pregnancy, and how much of it you need. What are the highest food sources of those things? So obviously having a prenatal is great, but you really want to be getting most of your nutrients from whole foods. And then I have like a sample meal day to give an example of how you could meet your requirements. And yeah, that's pretty much the book. So
sounds great. It sounds, I mean, it's definitely needed. You're so right. The information out there for pregnancy is so, whew, and to have something that's, Australian and simplified is fantastic. So obviously, if anyone in watching this is planning on getting pregnant or is pregnant or, has kids that are getting pregnant, if you go to Ellipse Health, the website, you can purchase the book. It's an ebook. Is that right? Through Ellipse Health. It's interesting, isn't it, what we know, like with my kids, the first 3, they just copped my whatever. So I was thinking, as you were saying, yes, we want a whole food carbs. I'm thinking, so fillet of fish isn't really, like I had cravings, I would be working. I remember with one of my pregnancies, I was working as a personal trainer, and I would have cravings. I'd go past McDonald's after work and just grab a fillet of fish. Oh my God.
yeah.
But my other 2, my little ones, they were lucky, really, with the knowledge that I had when I was pregnant with them. And I think for me, like, I found it interesting that, like, I was a faster before getting pregnant with number 5, but no, there was no way I was obviously fasting. My body needed so much more energy. But yeah, the cravings were much less, the mood swings were much less, everything just sort of progressed. And he was such an easy, everything was pretty easy. And then now the kids have gone from breast, or, my 4th didn't do breast that well, so he had to have some bottle, but to real food, like where the others, it was a rice cereal and, all the standard.
Yeah.
I was mortified when I found out how much sugar I was feeding them.
It's really frustrating. But the thing is, as mums, we feel like whatever we do is not good enough. So I think it's important to kind of be like, okay, well, that was the best information I had at that time. And, now that you know better, you do better. I think that's the main thing to think about.
Of course. But wouldn't it be just nice if this information, like, it's just, if everyone got at least access to the choice of saying, hey, you can do this, but this is, when we understand what's going on, like, how on earth rice cereal became the first food? I don't understand how that even happened, apart from obviously the corporations taking, getting involved in the dietary guidelines.
Yeah, I know. It's really frustrating, and I see that on a daily basis where people come and they go like, why? Or, when they start to see improvements and they're like in their 70s and they're like, I've lived 70 years without not knowing these things. Like, it's really frustrating. And it's just, unfortunately, it is what it is. We just got fed a lot of bad information. And now there's a lot of information. It's also hard, but yeah, we're getting there, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess, it's connecting people with people like yourself, to really go and just trust with the information that you get. And then, of course, really playing with it, trying different things, and knowing that there is, as much as people will say, there is a one size fits all, there really isn't a one size fits all. We've all got our own genetics and lifestyle and different, pathologies going on. So we really have to honor that and find out what works best for us. But don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, such a great chat. It was lovely to see you in Katoomba, by the way.
It was lovely to see you. Great talk. I loved it.
Oh, thanks. It was
the warm one.
Yeah.
To get warm. I love that one.
Well, that was cut out, so that was only for and I knew he would cut that bit out at the start. So
it's cut out. Oh,
yeah.
I love that part.
and they haven't seen Prans up there yet, so hopefully that will come out soon.
Oh, they're
yeah. No, they won't. No, they won't. It was awesome. But again, see, when we talk about information that isn't necessarily the standard, there's always going to be some, I suppose, questions around that, and people get, very uncomfortable with anything that is sort of outside, the dogma and stuff. But, gradually, as with people like us and with what you're doing and stuff, we can help people to just be okay with questioning and trying something different, particularly if it's not working. That's the thing.
Exactly.
If what you're doing now is not working, well, then let's try something else.
Might as well try. Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because I mean, what we know now, it might be in 20 years time, it might be completely different. So I think it's really important to just listen to your body and go with what feels right, and kind of, I guess, align yourself with people who you resonate with, and go from there. For sure.
Beautiful. Well, Nikki, I'd love you to finish by just sharing I don't know, your words of wisdom, top tips, anything that you'd like to sort of finish. I mean, the audience are very low carb, love it. Everyone is a low carb fan. A lot of people, I think, just constantly curious as to, what else there might be out there and what else, to see. So I think, everyone watching is already low carb to some degree, but any sort of insights that you'd like to share to end with?
Like with diet, or
Anything.
Look, I think, like, basically what I just said before, I think it's important to evaluate as you go along as well, so if you're doing something and it's working, just kind of and then you notice things kind of changing as you go along, instead of going, no, this is definitely the right way. I think it's important to challenge yourself and go, okay, well, if I'm starting to feel a certain way, then I need to go back and look at what I'm doing. So I think sometimes just going back and just listening to your body is the most important thing. So if you're feeling really good on a certain diet, then continue to do that, and don't be afraid to seek help. And sometimes, you might get frustrated because the first or second person you see might not kind of agree with what you are wanting to achieve, but you just got to keep going, and you'll find someone that you kind of resonate with. And
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, thank you so much for your time. And as I said, everyone knows where to find you if they want to connect with you and, look at getting the book too. So I love your work. I love what you're doing. Keep going. And thanks for coming and chatting with us today in the Hub.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. It was great.
Thanks, everyone. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.